Welcome back to the Free Code Camp podcast. I'm Quincy Larson, teacher and founder of freeCodeCamp.org. Today, we're talking with Braydon Coyer. He's a software engineer who started building mobile apps in high school, one of which even outsold Angry Birds for a few days. And then he dropped out of his computer science degree program once he got his first developer job, and he never went back. Braydon, welcome to the show.
Quincy, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to get to talk with you today. We've met a couple of times, but the one-on-one conversation is going to be great.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm hyped. We are going to talk about mobile app development versus web app development. You've got experience in both spheres. Strategies for applying for developer roles. We're going to talk about the 800 job applications that helped you get your first developer job. How useful is a CS degree really? And some sane ways to integrate AI into your developer workflows. Balanced takes, as always, here on the Free Code Camp podcast. Braydon, why don't we start off by talking about this gold rush that happened when you were in high school? The App Store launches. Everybody goes crazy about mobile app development. Everybody's trying to build mobile apps. Everybody's downloading actively mobile apps and like paying money for mobile apps and things that are kind of almost unheard of today.
Yep.
I guess that maybe still happens, but you were there at like on the ground floor at the start of that mobile app revolution.
Yeah. It was an interesting time because I come from a family of programmers. Like my dad was a programmer, my brother Devin's a programmer, and my dad is always like, "Hey, Braydon, have you thought about kind of hopping into programming? You wanna try this or that?" And I was very against it at first. I was not interested. I was a very visual person, so I did a lot of like digital art. But when Apple announced the iPad, which was right around the time the App Store came out, I was like, I need to build something for that device. Like at the time, it was like revolutionary, right? This huge touchscreen on this beautiful device with a UI that looked realistic in the software. Like, how did this work? And so that's kind of what drove me into programming and computer science in general. And so I found a program called Game Salad and a program like an SDK called Corona SDK, which has nothing to do with COVID or whatever.
Yeah, unfortunate name.
Unfortunate
Although I think
naming.
It worked out well for the beer company, Corona.
Yeah,
I heard their sales went
yeah.
up because everybody was ironically drinking them during COVID.
That's funny, man. Yeah. No, but I got my start building mobile apps, so specifically targeting iPhone and iPad, and then also some Android apps. And so that kind of kicked off my learning of computer science fundamentals and programming concepts. I originally self-published my own games before moving into a contract position to help build out various other applications. One app I built was called Knight's Quest. It was just a really simple arcade game that I was able to work with a brilliant artist with. His name is Chris Hildenbrand. And we were able to build out that app, and I put a lot of effort into it, did some marketing, so trying to learn, how do I market this game in a world where people are publishing, tons of apps every day as an indie developer. When you have like AAA studios coming out with like Jetpack Joyride at the time and Where's My Water and Cut the Rope, if you remember any of those games.
Oh yeah, my wife loved Where's My Water.
Yes. And so we published that one, and Knight's Quest did really well, especially on the Amazon App Store, where it like rocketed up the charts and was outselling Angry Birds for, I don't know, a day or two. And it was just really fun to see, to see people actually use something that I built to have fun. And that was kind of my origin into programming.
Yeah. Do you think that the heyday of mobile apps is past? Like, do you think you could still build like a mobile game without like independently and actually get attention, or is distribution harder now?
I think it's so difficult. I mean, even back in 2013, 2014, when I was kind of like really active into mobile development, there was just like favoritism, especially on the app stores. Like Apple would naturally want to feature a AAA game because they know it's going to make them more money versus an indie dev who nobody's ever heard of. And chances are, people might buy a few copies, but it's not going to go viral, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's really difficult. It was difficult back then. And that was when people were used to paying 99 cents for a game. That was the de facto, right? That was the default. Now we're kind of moving into this freemium, or we have moved into the freemium model, which is when we started to enter that phase. That's kind of where I jetted out. Where
Yeah,
the
so
whole
like
game,
essentially like
is
free to play, where you're
Yeah.
like paying for unlocks, or they're timing you out. They're being like, hey, you got to pay money if you want to keep playing today, or you have to wait till tomorrow.
Or you're just bombarded with so many ads that you don't even get to play the game. It's just ridiculous. And I get that that's where the market has gone, but I didn't really, it kind of sucked the joy out of releasing games for me. So when that happened, that's kind of where I transitioned into a contract role where I would work with different individuals and
Yeah.
companies to build out their games for them.
Yeah, well, I want to get into that, but I want to talk
Yeah.
a little bit more about mobile apps, just because a lot of people out there still want to build mobile apps. They think of the guy that developed Flappy Bird, for example, and like just the insane, following that game had, where people were literally hanging on to phones that were very old because they had,
Yeah.
Flappy Bird installed, and he pulled it from the App Store because he felt guilty. Just I don't know exactly what his motivations in pulling it were, but he didn't feel like. I think he probably looked at his fellow game devs and were like, they're working really hard, and I just threw this mediocre game together, and it like just got like it became a viral sensation. He didn't feel that success was necessarily his own. Is my understanding, and. Do you think that that sort of breakout is even possible? Or I guess what I want to know is, do you think it's changes in consumer preference, or do you think it's structural changes in the nature of mobile app games and monetization and things like that? Like, do people just not download apps anymore, or is it just that the entire industry has kind of moved in a different direction?
I think everything's moved, everything's shifted, everything is so different now. I think like the industry has shifted in the type of games that people like want to play and that the industry is trying to promote. But then as consumers, we're so against seeing a game that isn't free. Like, I mean, I'm guilty of this too. Like, I see a game and I'm like, 99 cents. Ooh, I don't know, like $1? Like,
Yeah,
to
what if it
me, that
sucks and I
sounds
wasted
crazy
$1? I'll feel
expensive.
ripped off.
But like, at the same time, I'll go spend, $100 on a pickleball paddle, right? So like,
Yeah.
it's just the industry and the market is in such a weird place where I feel like if people were getting into mobile development, they would need to probably try and enter that venue through a AAA company rather than independent development if they want to see some success. Now, as a hobby, I would totally recommend it. I think it's so fun to develop for mobile. It's a different experience. You get to learn about App Store and promotion and how the review process works, and you get to pull out your hair just like the rest of us with the review process. But like if you're going in professionally, I think the way to go right now is probably through an organization rather than as an independent developer.
Okay, that's very helpful. So, do you think there are any avenues of game development that are still like where there's still kind of like a lot of value to be derived, like developing games for Steam or developing games for other like app stores, or developing like they're like people that develop games to be sold on physical media, like
Yeah.
they could be played on like old hardware, like Sega Genesis games and stuff like. Do you see any of that as still viable for indie devs, or do you think most of that is just like hobbyists?
Great question. I think that the introduction of new mediums to consume content might open like an untapped area for you to like try and exploit. So, for example, the Apple Vision Pro right now, it's a premium product. It's very expensive. Not a lot of people have it, but the people who did buy it are probably going to be okay with paying 99 cents to download a game.
Yeah.
And I have one. There are not a lot of games on the Vision Pro or apps in general, right? So it doesn't have to be a game necessarily, but I think that market right now is like really ripe for the taking.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of content, and so I think indie developers would see a lot of success there, but it's hard to do.
So if you were like hypothetically, you've already got this pretty remunerative job working as a senior web developer, developer 3, like you raised
right.
into the number categories, right?
That's right.
Because you're so senior. If hypothetically you did want to like create your own game studio and maybe just work and maybe hire like a few contractors to work with you or something like that to build out a game, do you think you would target the Apple Vision Pro?
I would probably have to do more research to see if it's like financially feasible. From a interest perspective, absolutely, because I love the direction that Apple's taking with VR. and the augmented reality portion of it. And there are some experiences on here that are just mind blowing. So from an interest point of view, I think it'd be super cool. Is it the best business decision? I don't know. I feel like
Yeah.
I'd need to do more research, especially since I've been removed from that market for like almost 10 years now.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your background. We're going to learn all about your journey into tech, how you dropped out of school, how you applied 800 times to get a job, and finally got the job. And that is a very cool story. First, I want to thank the 11,384 kind folks who support Free Code Camp each month with a donation. This is like critical to our charities' sustainability. You can join these chill human beings who make freeCodeCamp.org, like all the courses we publish, the core interactive curriculum, the podcast, all this possible by going to donate.freeCodeCamp.org. I'd also like to thank Wix Studio, who have provided a grant that helps make this podcast possible. Wix Studio provides developers tools to rapidly build websites with everything out of the box, then extend, replace, and break boundaries with code. Learn more at wixstudio.com. Braydon, you attended UT Arlington, which is a pretty good public university. You got into their CS degree program. Can you walk us through your experience with college?
Yeah. This was this was interesting. So I graduated actually with an associate's degree from a local community college right after high school. So I was doing dual credit. I was doing high school and the base core classes of my computer science degree at the same time.
Yeah, and just to be clear, UT is University of Texas.
Yes.
You're based here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, like I am.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you hear like terms like Arlington, that's a city in Texas. It's part of. It's pretty close to Dallas. Like people just call it Dallas, but it's actually like tons of little cities that are like all kind of like sprawled together.
Good call out. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I graduated with my associate's degree. At the time, I was still doing mobile development, and then got accepted into UT Arlington and started attending their computer science degree. I was there for maybe almost 2 years, and then that's when I landed my full-time web development job. At which point I transitioned over to Western Governors University, which is an online university and degree program. And I was there for about a year. I lost some credits in the transfer, but my thinking was I'm working full time, I'm commuting, I can't go to campus in Arlington and work a job in Plano. So I went remote. And so that's what WGU allowed me to do. But eventually I actually just dropped out. And the reason is like I had my foot in the door. I had been doing programming for years at that point. The transition from mobile to web was difficult, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I was in the door. I had my first full-time job. I was thriving. And the topics that were being presented to me at university was just very dated, very basic. I can't hardly think of any class that I took that helped me in my day job. I mean, I think college itself, like, taught me how to learn. It taught me more about myself, about how I prefer to study and learn. But like the actual courses and these, core classes of, C and C sharp and, it didn't give me anything for my day job as a front end developer.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't find any value in it. If I'm being honest, everything was like at least Quincy, 10 years dated. That's crazy. That we're paying so much money for this information that's so outdated.
And you were attending like, a public university that's, subsidized by the state. Did you have any like financial assistance, like scholarships or anything like that?
I might have had 1 or 2 scholarships, but it wasn't anything that covered like the majority of my tuition. And so I was kind of paying it as I go.
Yeah. How much
I was
do you
working
think you spent on UT Arlington? And then I want to contrast that with WGU, which is much more affordable.
I would say probably close to 30 out of pocket.
30K?
Yeah, over the course of however long I was
2
there.
years?
It was over, almost 2 years.
Yeah, that's not terrible. Were you living
it's
on
not
campus
terrible,
or
no.
off campus? You were commuting to school from
Yeah.
your parents' home? Were you living with your parents?
Yes, I was living in South Dallas, like Waxahachie area.
Mm-hmm.
So I would drive up northwest to UT every day.
Yeah. And so that's like, what kind of commute is that?
45 minutes, an hour, depending on when I choose to go. And I was very
Yeah.
strategic,
Yeah.
you
Like,
know?
cause there's a lot of traffic.
Oh,
in
it's so
Dallas.
bad.
It's like Dallas, for people who haven't been here, it's like the fourth largest metropolitan area in the United States. Maybe Houston is slightly larger. Houston, of course, being a neighboring city here in Texas. But it's a huge sprawl. It takes forever to drive anywhere because everything's really far apart, because Texas is like twice the size of Japan. And it's just like
Yeah.
a single state in the union, right? So everything's spread out. Yeah. So the commute was a major reason you left. You went to WGU, which maybe you can talk about WGU and what attracted you to that program, Western Governors University.
Western Governors University, I found that their computer science program was more up to date than UT Arlington's, though I would say it wasn't as up to date as I probably would have preferred. Like, I mean, there are coding boot camps. You know, you can go through in 3 months and you're going to learn more about modern web development than you will in a 4-year degree, even at WGU.
Right.
But WGU allowed me to do it remote, which is what I needed because I was working full time in Plano.
Yeah. And WGU, like, how much is it? Like, it's kind of like the buffet model, was it, at the time you were? I believe it's still this way, where you can basically take as many courses as you want. Bo Carnes, who runs the FreeCodeCamp YouTube channel, famously got his degree from WGU in like
nice.
a year for like
Yeah.
less than $10,000.
Yeah.
He's got like a full blown like software development. I think it's called like a bachelor's of software development or something like that.
Yeah. No, it's a really cool program because it allows you to just like go through classes as quickly as you can because there's a competency exam at the end of the class. So for example, if I use the word CLEP because that's kind of what I grew up with.
Yeah, the CLEP test is a common test used in the U.S. where you can like essentially CLEP out of university degree courses. You may have done this because you said you basically graduated high school with an associate because you were concurrently enrolled in both high school and community college, which is a very cool hack to any high schoolers out there. Do this.
It saved me a lot of time.
Doing this. Talked to a lot of smart people
and
who
money.
Did this.
Yeah. So I was able to. So I lost credits when I transferred from UT Arlington. The courses and everything just didn't align as I would have hoped. So I actually lost. I don't know. It was something like 15 credit hours, which is a lot. But I was able in one semester, and they do semesters a little bit differently. It's like 6-month periods. So you pay in a 6-month period. It's like, I don't know. I forget what it was at
like
the time.
$5K
it might have
or
been,
something?
Yeah, it was like $6,000 or something. And you can do as many courses as you want. So in one 6-month period, I did 32 hours because I was able to CLEP out of so many courses because I had that background. Like, I already know.
So you already
about
have like the domain
Agile,
expertise. You're just getting them to certify and give you the degree.
Yeah, essentially, right? Yeah. And so a lot of them I was able to just go through like that, which was great. And I think it's a great opportunity if that's something you want to pursue. But again, even the stuff that I had to take that I couldn't CLEP out of was so dated. You know, I'm paying $6,000. Well, it's really $12,000 annually, which is cheaper than UT Arlington. But I was getting married. I was driving almost 2 hours a day each way to work.
Yeah, I mean,
because of
that's
traffic,
that's
right? I mean, it's
brutal.
just like I don't have the time, and I wasn't learning what I needed to help me excel at my job. I was already excelling. I would rather use that time to invest more, to learn more from my peers at work, to find a mentor there. I don't know. So at the end of the day, I dropped out. I was there for probably a little over a year, I think, and never looked back.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about the process through which you found this job, because you're studying at UT Arlington. Did you start like just applying to jobs? Like, were you just like, enough? Like, I needed to make money. What was the extrinsic motivator, I guess, or was it just an intrinsic motivator where you're like, I want to work as a dev as soon as possible? Or did you have like pressure to try to like get out and get into the job market?
Great question. So at that time, as a mobile app developer, it was becoming harder and harder to make money, right? People are moving towards a freemium model, and it's harder and takes longer as an indie dev to crank out a game. I mean, I was doing one every 3 months, you know, in the middle of school as well, which is like, you know, 4 games a year. but I had to make a certain amount of money off of those in order to, pay for
Yeah.
school and to, pay my bills. I was still living at home, but I was like, I was paying rent. I had my own insurance and everything like that. So bills needed to be paid. So because of that, because I just wasn't making enough money, and it was becoming harder and harder, and my interest kind of was gone because like the bias of the App Store, and I'd reach out and Apple would say, "Oh, this looks like a great game. Yeah, let's go ahead and feature that." And then the day comes and then like, "Actually, Where's My Water 2 just came out. I think we're going to
Oh man, that sucks.
I think we're going
man.
to, do that instead." And
Yeah,
you're just like, "Well, I mean, there goes everything, right?" So
Yeah, the whole App Store model to me is just like I don't want to participate where like you can just pay money to show up higher and stuff like that. Like, I
oh
like
my gosh.
egalitarian, web, like anybody can get to the front page of Reddit, right?
Yeah.
But it's very hard or very costly to get to the front page of the Apple App Store.
Very costly.
And like
You've got to do
that
so
whole
much.
walled garden ecosystem has always rubbed me wrong, and
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and vent. Like I think it's BS. Like
Yep.
I do not like the App Store monopoly, or like, and I hope it gets broken up and that people can just put their any apps they want. But I understand from a quality assurance, but like really 30% of income to like ensure that the app meets the standards.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll quit.
Absolutely ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
I mean, those are all things that I was feeling at the time too. So as a naturally like visual person, I said mobile development kind of caught my attention because, big, beautiful screen. I wanted to create something for it, create an experience. So naturally, I feel like front-end development kind of spoke to me. And so that's kind of the venue I chose to pursue. With the help of like freeCodeCamp, actually, at the time. This was probably, goodness, this might have been 2014, maybe 2015,
Yeah,
somewhere around
that's
there.
right about when we
So, like,
launched.
yeah, so it was still new. I think I took a HTML and JavaScript course, and that was the thing. I really appreciated that, and I think I'm kind of where I'm at now because of freeCodeCamp. Like seriously, it's not just like a plug. Like seriously, there's a few resources that I used because I feel like I learn in a very specific way,
Yeah.
and it allowed me to learn in my style and to do it at my pace and leisure. And anyway, so
Yeah, well, self-paced, that's a huge thing for busy people like you that are driving 2 hours a day and going to school and trying to keep their mobile app business running at the same time, all this stuff, right? I think it's absolutely critical that we meet people where they are. Busy adults. I mean, that's like our audience. We're not trying to help kids necessarily. Some people like use freeCodeCamp with their kids. As long as your kids are 13 or older, that's fine. Technically, they have to be 13 or older unless you're like supervising them. Not because of the content, but because of U.S. laws, the COPPA law that we have to comply with. And Khan Academy, for example, has been able to get kind of a COPPA exemption, but I don't want to spend like a fortune on legal fees and compliance and stuff to be able to do that. It's not worth it.
my
Because
gosh.
most people who use freeCodeCamp are just busy adults like you and me that want to continue to sharpen the saw and pick up new skills. So talk about the application process. Like you've trained yourself through using these open learning resources. You already had a background in mobile app development, which I imagine is a huge head start over a typical person who's building their first mobile app or web apps. Maybe you can talk about how you decided, okay, I want to be a front end dev. Like you kind of identified that and you started learning the skills. What was your job search like?
Job search was super frustrating. This was, almost 10 years ago now. And, like I said, I come from a family of programmers, so I had a lot of advice and help as far as like tips on when you submit a resume, here's some things you should do. Don't just spray and pray. You should look up the company. You should, find a way that you can help. And so I started just applying to various companies. And these aren't like things like Google. These are like local companies. These are, companies I'm finding on Indeed or other places like that where I can send in my resume. And I would tailor my resume to each company. I would put a decent amount of effort into each one and say, hey, here's how I think I can help based on my experience. Here's what I'm seeing. If it's a SaaS product, I might use the tool and kind of gain an understanding of, okay, here's what you guys are doing in the market, and here's something I noticed. Maybe here's a problem that I can solve, or, based on my experience, here's why I think I'd be a good fit. So over the course of a year, maybe a little more, when I wasn't in school, when I wasn't doing web dev, I was nonstop applying for jobs. And I went back and checked, and it was just about 800. It might have been slightly over 800 job applications over the course of 12 to 14 months that I sent in. And I think out of those, I got single-digit responses to those 800 plus applications.
Response, like them emailing you back, like, "Hey, thanks for applying. Can we interview you?"
Yeah, exactly. Like that initial call. I had less than 10 phone screens. Didn't even, it wasn't even like an interview. It was just like the initial, recruiter phone screen. I got less than 10 of those. And out of the ones that I did, I only got one offer at the end of the day. And that's the one I took.
Wow. So it's like that astronaut meme of like the astronaut like holding the gun with the other astronaut.
Yeah, right.
Like, wow, it's really hard to get a job. Always has been.
Yeah, well, I think it was at the time, we see waves of the industry and hiring, and I know it's always really difficult for juniors. I think at the time that I was applying, it was hard. I think it got better slightly after, for a time, and then it got hard again, and we see these waves. But the issues. A lot of people know the issues with our hiring in this vertical, where juniors have to have 5 years of experience to be able
the
to
unrealistic job descriptions.
Yeah,
and
crazy.
The the hiring managers that don't actually understand the technologies that they're trying to hire for, or those people might not be actually writing the job description, and then they use the applicant tracking systems that filter people out because, oh, this guy doesn't have a degree.
Yep.
So we're not even going to look at his resume, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And of course, do you think that lacking the degree may have been part of why you got so few callbacks?
It's a good question. I don't know, because I would suspect it was probably more of, hey, this guy has less than 2 years of web dev experience, but they don't look at my entire history of I can actually program. I've been doing this for years.
Yeah, this guy has made a bunch of money off mobile apps. He clearly not only knows how to build an app, but how to get things done. Right. I would consider that very good signal if I were looking at a candidate, in terms of whether they're likely to be able to hit the ground running and get things done.
So I think that was probably the main thing, is they kind of glossed over my experience because I saw mobile, and maybe it just wasn't interesting to them, or these hiring managers just aren't technical, and so they're looking for specific keywords or specific years of experience. I'm not sure what it is, but it has never been an issue for me, my degree. It could be a factor with landing my first job. I don't know, because I didn't really hear back at the time.
You're in.
Yeah, you're in, right? And it is never once. I'll do interviews all the time. I try and make it a habit of always interviewing, even if I'm not necessarily trying to move. I like to see what's out there, what the opportunities are, and practice. I think interviewing and practicing is really important. The degree has never come up. It's never come up.
I'm excited to learn more because you now interview people and you hire people, right? Because you've raised up to the point that you're the person on the team who talks with the new candidates and stuff like that. So you've been on both sides of it, and you're far away. You're 10 years divorced from that first job experience. So you have a tremendous amount of insight into how the proverbial sausage is made and how the selection process and all that stuff. So we're going to get into that. We're also going to get into strategies that you would use if you were applying for jobs. But since you brought up, mobile app to web app, and the fact that a lot of employers didn't understand, that mobile app development was not that different from web app development. Maybe you can tell us, I've always kind of told people my theory on mobile app development, not having done a lot of mobile app development itself, is basically it's you're a full stack dev on both sides, but your client is the mobile app device, the iPhone or the Android phone that the app is running on, and for the web, your client is usually a browser, Like,
Yep.
and that basically they're similar. It's just that you're working with different SDKs or APIs and stuff. SDK stands for Software Development Kit, I believe, is what the acronym stands for. So when we say SDK, like the Android SDK and stuff like that, that's what we mean. So agree or disagree? Mobile app development is just front-end development for phones.
Yeah, I think so, right? I think there's a lot of similarities. I think the main difference is the way that you interact. There are way more input possibilities on a mobile phone. You think, yeah, touching, but then you've got pinching, you've got multi-finger, opportunity, and like the screen, you can actually program to figure out which finger is touching the screen, and you've got the gyroscope in your device, and you can do cool things like that. So I think there's a lot of similarities. The big difference is like the way you go about building an experience. But it is like a full stack. I like the way that you said that. It's like a full stack web development in mobile. It's like, especially as an indie developer, I think if you're working like at a AAA studio or something like that, you're working on a team, it might be different. I can't speak to that.
Yeah, you'd probably be leveraging more like GPUs and like really getting the most out of the computer. But like most indie games I play, they're not like really super graphically intensive. You can play it on like a 5-year-old phone and it probably run just fine.
Yeah, exactly, right. But yeah, it's like a web app, but on mobile.
Okay.
Full stack. Yeah.
Cool. So if somebody wanted to get into mobile app development, do you have like anything that you'd recommend like they do in 2025?
Oh, yeah. So back in the day, I was using GameSalad. I was using Corona SDK, which is based on Lua scripting language.
Yeah, very popular programming language that I understand. Minecraft, like is Minecraft built in Lua?
Lua's fantastic.
Yeah.
Today, I would probably look into more native solutions. So, Apple's come out with Swift and Swift UI, and I think it's called PlayKit, Playground Kit or something like that. So I would look into probably those. Figure out what target you want to hit on. If it's going to be iOS, that ecosystem. If it's going to be Android or Universal, it could be played on any device. Yeah, that will probably.
Let's say, and again, I just want to jump in and like distill this down a little bit further. Like, do you have any advice if let's say you're in the United States? Mm-hmm. Would you recommend like doing Apple versus Android versus using something like Flutter that could, in theory, build an app for both? Like freeCodeCamp, like we have an iPhone app and an Android app, but they're both the same code base. It's the same open source Flutter code base. If anybody wants to contribute, get some.
Yeah, there you go.
Welcome it. We've got tons of issues. So go ahead.
Yeah, I would probably do everything you can to make it universal. So using like Flutter or Ionic, based off in Angular, something like that, I think is, especially as like a hobby or as an independent developer, is going to give you the most chance of success because you have more people who potentially have an option to play your game or to download your app. But it's really hard. It's really hard nowadays just because of where the market's at and how these corporations, Apple, Amazon, Google, will almost prioritize other applications and games because they know it's going to make them money. It's very hard to shine any light on an independent application nowadays. But I do think that there are some untapped, markets. Like the new Vision Pro just came out.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to get into mobile development, if you wanted to target Apple,
you're developing for a targeted device. Like you could argue maybe the same thing for like developing an Xbox game.
Yeah,
or something
exactly.
Like that. Like you're using SDKs and you're building with like the tools that the developer has given you, which in Apple's case, they have like Xcode and they have, all these other things that essentially make it easier to build games. And they want you to use these because this makes better use of like their, libraries and it's going to lead to better performance and everything. And also they kind of want to get you locked into their ecosystem. So it's harder to jump over and it's kind of like the whole multi-cloud, like the cloud companies hate it when you talk about multi-cloud because like, no, just use our cloud solutions. Don't shop around for different services. They want to get you into their ecosystem. Right. And I think that's probably similar with like developer ecosystems. Like Nintendo was, even back in the 80s, they're like really big on trying to get people to just be like one system, game developers and not to go out and develop games for Sega or the TurboGrafx 16 or anything like that. That's always been like the tendency of these big platform companies, if you want to think of Apple, iPhone as a platform essentially. So we're not going to drill too much into the business, but I do think it's worth, like, if you want to build mobile games, do spend some time actually learning how the business of mobile app development or the business of game development in general. And I want to ask, did you ever watch the documentary Indie Game?
Ooh, I don't remember. I think I tried to watch it a few years ago when our daughter was born. But there's a lot of things I don't remember about that time.
You tried to watch it, but you weren't just like, oh, this is too inaccurate. You just got too busy with your daughter.
Yeah, I think it's more like I might have watched it and I just don't remember because of sleep deprivation and everything like that. Yeah. So I know it exists and I know there's a lot of hype around it.
Okay, cool. Well, that is a documentary that I watched, and some of my understanding of how indie game development. I mean, granted, all three of those games were like huge smash hits. Yeah. I think it was like the Fedora game, and then there was like Stardew Valley or something like that was covered on it. And of course, my favorite indie game of recent years is Spelunky, which was developed by a single person who basically did like everything. I think they did like all the sprites, the programming. They may have even done the music. I can't remember, but like just a real testament to like that kind of the lionized notion of the one person kind of like shop.
Yeah. And another one I'll throw out there if people are interested is the creator of Fruit Ninja. If there's like a YouTube video that came out a couple years ago, super interesting. Of the very, very small team that they had, they kind of pivoted away from other games and went all in on Fruit Ninja. And just I feel like the technical explanation in that video is really interesting and very accurate to mobile indie development.
Check the show notes or video description if you're watching on YouTube, and I'll have a link to that video. And you can watch that as soon as you finish this one, because we've got lots more exciting stuff to talk about. Angular. You mentioned Angular and Ionic, and you've used Angular in your job. And a lot of people are like, oh, Angular's dead. Like everybody's moved on to like Vue or React or like these other front-end development frameworks or libraries. I'm not going to try to differentiate between the two because it feels like people will correct me pedantically regardless of what I say. So these tools, these general purpose tools for developing web apps. Do you use Angular at work? Have you been using it recently? Is it getting better?
Yeah, so we do use Angular at work. I've been using Angular for probably 5 or 6 years now. And there's some really interesting new developments in like the Angular community. And I think a lot of people think of Angular as kind of off the market or as a dead framework. But I don't think they realize that, Angular serves a different purpose, I think, than, React did. And I know we kind of moved away from Create React app nowadays, but Angular is like an actual framework. Like it has everything that you need to build a full stack application. And because of that, I feel like the need for updates, it wasn't as needed as React. You have to bring in a router, and so people are building routers, and you have to bring in, whatever you want to use for any other thing in React, right? Angular has all that. So for a long time, we didn't see a ton of development, new additions to improve developer experience in Angular. But the last couple of years, there's been some really exciting stuff. New things like the control flow in Angular. It's one of my favorite things. We actually get to use like if statements in our template files instead of having to use like structural directives. I think it's easier to read. I think it's just improved the developer experience and flow of writing your markup in general. Signals are another big one for Angular, a new way to like track your state management and automatically update the template when data changes. So there's a lot of really cool stuff in Angular and some new stuff coming up. One of the big things, Quincy, I'm really excited about is this new resource API, which is a new way to like handle asynchronous data fetching in Angular. And I think that's coming up in version 20, which I think is slated for release here pretty soon. Awesome. So Angular's been booming recently.
Yeah. Well, while we're talking about developer experience improvements to Angular, I want to dive into like developer experience in general, because you're a person who spends a great deal amount of time, like probably in your IDE, writing code, reviewing other people's code. And what are the tools that have been the biggest like windfall for you over the past year or two in terms of just like improving your developer productivity and making work more fun and less tedious?
I'm going to give a 2-part answer. I think one will be like tools that I've downloaded and I think are helpful. And then 2 will be tools that I've like built myself.
Okay, cool.
So first thing that comes to mind for me is Raycast, which is like a replacement for Spotlight on your Mac if you use Mac. I know it's coming to Windows soon. But Raycast is absolutely phenomenal. They've got so many plugins that allow you to do different things, and AI is like integrated into the heart of the tool, which means that I use it for a bunch of stuff. I use it to automatically join meetings. I use it to, I'll write out a piece of feedback on, a PR, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll get my thoughts out first, and I'll go through and do a first draft, and then I might run it through a custom prompt that I made, because I'm very much an advocate for, we're looking at the code here. We're not looking or considering, we don't want to point fingers at a developer, right? We're not here. We're all on the same team.
Criticize the code, not
the code, not the developer. And so a custom prompt that might help me identify, hey, this might come across in this way or something like that, and to try and still find a way to get the point across without potentially causing conflict. So I use that a lot. There are some other plugins that I have in there that help me, like, oh, yeah, you want to quickly find what Jira ticket you're currently working on. If you need to grab the Jira slug or something, that's what I have to use in my workflow. Okay. It does a lot of that for me. So that's a big one.
Raycast. And by the way, there's a link to that below. I use something called Alfred on Mac.
Yes,
which is
Alfred.
Maybe similar. It's been around probably a lot longer.
Yep.
So I'm not sure. Like, I don't use the AI features like right in it or anything. Maybe Alfred has some features like that, but Alfred's been my go-to since I became a Mac. Like, I use Mac for pretty much everything now. I do have a PC for gaming, but I don't game a lot these days because I'm so busy. But yeah, check out the Raycast link. This is not sponsored by them or anything like that. But
I'm just a big advocate. Yeah, I love Raycast.
Yeah, I mean, if you love it and if you're actually building on top of it and building custom stuff to improve your workflow, that's what it's all about. You're a developer. We can engineer our processes. We can continually improve them in ways that people are less technical cannot, and so we should leverage that. And I'm thrilled that you're figuring out new ways to get more done. And you said this was a 2-part answer. Yeah.
So Raycast was maybe my answer for something that I installed, and this is and then I'll turn to something that I built myself recently to improve. I think a process that we have on our engineering team, which hopefully is helping everybody. But we have a very interesting code review process where we have different groups of individuals that review code, and certain PRs require a certain amount of approvals, et cetera, et cetera. It's this complicated tree structure. And so we were manually having to go post our code review link to GitHub or to GitLab or whatever into a Slack channel and ask for that specific group that we needed. Somebody would come and they would review the MR. They might approve.
What's an MR?
A merge request. That's what we call it.
Okay. So
it's
like a PR,
GitLab's. Yeah, it's a PR.
GitLab's.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah,
MR, PR, same thing.
The more you know.
The more you know. Yeah, we use GitLab, so that's their terminology.
Yeah, because pull request is it was actually invented by GitHub. Interestingly, that wasn't a native feature of Git. So that is one of the big innovations that we have to give GitHub credit for.
GitHub's great. So anyway, there's a lot of things that we had to do as developers manually to get our code across the finish line. And so I wrote a Python script that would do all this for us and automate everything. So it takes into account, different review groups, how many approvals you have. It'll automatically listen for GitLab merge request events that come through a stream, filter it out, go post it to Slack, automatically react to certain messages depending on which group has finished reviewing or has comments on it. It'll tag individuals. So I'm a big advocate for if you see something that's going to save people time, you should start looking horizontal while you're going vertical. That T-shaped kind of structure as a developer, as you become more senior, try and help solve problems not just for your customer but for your development team.
Awesome. And I want to talk about AI because you can't not talk about it on a podcast these days. Of course, my thesis is that the capabilities are greatly overhyped, which makes sense because companies want to get their valuation going up. But there is a lot of utility there, and I do use it. I have issues with, for example, the intellectual property aspect of it, which I've talked at great length. You won't see AI art on freeCodeCamp anywhere, for example. But I generally don't ever copy any sort of text out of it and use it for anything other than just reference and research. So that is my kind of quick caveat about using AI, and I can totally understand why people would completely refuse to use it. And at the same time, I think it's probably like greatly overstated that like, oh, kids are going to fall behind if they're not using AI in school and stuff. I think that there's the truth, as usual, is somewhere in between, but where it is really where the debate is. But you do use AI for getting things done. And I want to talk about like how you practically apply it. And I just want to, even with that disclosure, I don't want you to feel ashamed of using it or anything like that. Anybody who's listening to this, use it for whatever. But I just wanted to tell you all that's how I use it and how I perceive it. So, but you have used it a lot, and you've tried probably a lot of these AI tools. Yeah. And I wanted to kind of get your take on like where the proverbial utility is. Separate the steak from the sizzle. Since we're both in Texas, I'll say that. Apologies to the vegetarians in the audience, but we're in Texas and we do eat steak. Unless you're a vegetarian. I didn't actually ask beforehand.
No, I'm not.
Okay. Do you eat steak?
I love steak.
All right. And also apologies to our Indian audience and stuff like that. Please carry on.
Yes. Yeah. I think the things I'm going to say are scoped to me specifically, and, other people are going to have different opinions and experiences, obviously. So we use Copilot, at work. So, it integrates nicely into VS Code, into IntelliJ, into WebStorm, whatever you want, into any IDE. And it's fine, but I prefer to use AI not in a way of like generating code for me, but rather to help other areas of my job so I can code, if that makes sense. So for example, I mentioned, using AI to help me spot potentially different things in my comments on code reviews, oh, maybe you could say this in a different way, or, something like that. I also love to use AI with my note taking. So I've got 2 kids. My attention is being pulled every which direction all the time. I work from home full time, right? You might even hear him at the bottom of the stairs. I don't know. But so I have to take a ton of notes. And I use AI not to just transcribe like meetings and everything and help me pull out action items, although I think that's very helpful. But I use AI to help me find information. So I use a note-taking tool called Tana, Tana, and it's a node-based like note-taking tool that is semantic, kind of like object-oriented programming, where you can apply these tags to different nodes that then apply like properties onto a note. And so Tana has AI built into it as well, which is really helpful because then I can have AI automatically like fill out certain properties of saying, oh, this is a technology, and this technology relates to this project or, whatever SDK or whatever.
Okay, this is interesting. So I want to contrast this with my flow, which is my note-taking flow is very simple. I take detailed notes throughout, like I'm taking them right now. I've already got 70 pages of notes from our conversation. I drop them into Google, like I just email them to myself, and then Google search is really good on Gmail. So I can we have like Google Suite. They give it to charities for free. If you're a tax exempt 501c3 charity like freeCodeCamp, you can get free Google Suite, which is awesome. Shout out to Google for providing that to charities. And their search is really good. So whenever I have anything, I just look it up in Google, but that doesn't give me the ability to like think more abstractly. So with a tool like Tana, what you're saying is essentially because it like semantically links all these different things, you can ask more general questions. You can say, here's a related conversation that you had, or like things that you wouldn't necessarily find through a mere Google searching of your email.
Yeah, I think so. It can identify the meaning of your notes and then help you find related content, or just help you resurface information, which I think is an area that I struggle in a lot, is where I'm like taking a ton of notes, and I need to remember, next time I'm in this meeting, this little blurb that I wrote. Tana's really good about like, oh, hey, you might want to bring this up now. But then also help me think about different ways to consider something. So if I'm taking notes about, for example, a conference talk that I'm going to give, and I'm writing out outlines, I'm writing about key points that I want to hit on, Tana can say, oh, this is cool, but have you thought about this? Because I found this note in your knowledge base, and it seems to contradict what you're saying here, or it's complimenting you, and you might want to include a reference to the concepts that you had here.
Interesting.
So I use it like that. I find it's really helpful for me. What other ways am I using AI? Uh, well, I'll tell you one thing, and this is kind of a pivot, and so you can tell me not to go here if you want to. But AI in hiring
Yes, I
is
want to talk about
very
this, and I want to talk about
interesting.
hiring in general. So
Yeah.
let's put a pin in that, and let's finish the discussion about AI, and then we'll jump
Okay.
over to hiring and how
Okay. Okay.
how
Okay.
it's impacting that. Sorry,
Okay.
I have to maintain order and
No, I got
structure
you.
to
I
the
got you.
conversation.
No, I
Otherwise, we'll
appreciate
just
you
ramble.
keeping us on track. Yeah. So I don't know. I think AI is here to stay, you know. But I kind of agree with you that it's not gonna take our jobs, obviously. And I think you have to have a technical background in order to get AI to do what you want it to do. Like I used AI to do something yesterday with like the Canvas HTML element. I was using Canvas to build something, and it did something really strange. And I was like, no, we can solve the solution doing this pattern or something like that, right? You have to understand core concepts. You have to bring with it your expertise and knowledge to help it get on the right track. But again, my preference is I'm not using AI to write all of my code. I'm using it to help me look at my code and consider, different solutions. Mainly because I love coding. I love to solve problems. I love to be creative. And so that's kind of how I use AI.
Yeah, right on. So again, like what I'm hearing from you is you already are a subject domain expert in the field of software development, so you can actually utilize AI in kind of like a smart way, and not just like a dumb way where it's making dumb assumptions or it's hallucinating, and that's ultimately ending up in your code base because you don't know better.
Right, right. I think you have to. It would be naive to use AI in an area. I think that you don't have at least some domain knowledge in, because you don't want to be putting out code there that's going to be flaky or, domain knowledge is important too. Like I said, you got to know what else is going on in the repo. You
Right.
use AI for everything. You're not going to know your own code structure.
So
right?
like an AI CEO would counter that, like, yeah, that's the case now, but like 6 months from now, like how far do you really believe it'll be before somebody with like zero domain expertise could in theory like build like a fairly robust app? Do you think that's
I
going to
don't.
come to pass?
That's a good question, Quincy, and I don't know because I've been hearing that same thing, like, oh, in 6 months, it's going to be
Yeah.
obsolete.
In 6
But I've
months,
been hearing that
full
every six
self-driving,
months.
Yeah.
But I've been hearing that every 6 months, right? And so everybody's kind of been wrong so far. But we have been seeing improvements, but where are we going to hit that threshold? I don't know.
Yeah.
We kind of just take it one day at a time.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I appreciate your sober perspective on it. And I do want to jump into hiring because, again, this is a big deal for pretty much everybody who's listening to this who is either on the job market or is afraid they might be on the job market because there are layoffs happening in tech. And I never try to sugarcoat it. I never try to say it's easy to get a developer job. Anybody can get a developer job. I say any sufficiently motivated person can eventually get a developer job. And it takes years of studying and preparing is my sentiment. And I do want to emphasize Free Code Camp. Like, we don't have a financial outcome in you learning the code and getting a developer job. Like we just provide the free open source resources and you all can use them. And a lot of people in the Free Code Camp community have eventually gotten jobs because they are persistent and because they do things other than just program on their own, but they actually build out like their network and their reputation, things that I talk about in my free book. If you just Google Learn to Code book, it should be the top organic non-paid result on Google. And I think that that's very important. So I'll get off my soapbox, but like I just want to emphasize that learning to code is a long process, and you're going to give us some. You're going to kind of elucidate the process from an employer in terms of like how things may have changed since you were applying with the AI, filtering and stuff like that you mentioned earlier, and also just how your perspective has changed now that you're on the other side of the table interviewing the job applicants.
Yeah, it's been super interesting. So I've been hiring for probably 5 years now. I've given hundreds and hundreds of interviews, and over the last 3 years, I think ChatGPT was introduced late 2022, something like that.
Yeah.
It has become so difficult to organically evaluate somebody's technical expertise. Now, as a side note, my company right now, they send you home with a take-home interview. Okay, so naturally we're dealing with a lot of submissions that look identical, and we can just tell based on the output, like, okay, this individual clearly just ran this through ChatGPT or Claude and hit submit. And I think that's partly, our fault. Like, our submission isn't very, or our challenge isn't very, very difficult in general, but we kind of have a purpose for that because we want them to bring it back, and then we kind of build upon that solution. But it's become so difficult with AI to like really organically evaluate somebody's expertise. And by the way, I would love for this to be a conversation too. Like, if you have thoughts, we should, because I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody knows the answer. Like, we're trying to figure out what to do. Yeah.
I don't have nuanced take on this. The way that FreeCodeCamp hires, like, I've never actually conducted a technical interview. That might shock people. I've never looked at a resume. I've never asked people to submit a resume. I used to do that when I used to be a school director, and I had a team of like 25 teachers, and I would do all that stuff, but that was in the context of evaluating teachers, right?
Yeah.
And working as a dev, the way that FreeCodeCamp hires, this is an open public knowledge. Everybody knows this, because like, if people send me a job application, I'll say, or like, hey, here's my resume. I'm like really interested. Like, here are the documents to get started on the open source project. We hire 100% of the people on the team have been hired because they were prolific, protracted open source contributors over like the course of years. If you want to get a job at FreeCodeCamp, it's much harder than getting a job at Google, because you don't have to just go through some like interview process. You actually have to spend a great deal of time, like maybe hundreds and thousands of hours, contributing to the code base, and then eventually we will hire you. And the reason we do it that way is we can't afford to take a chance on somebody who is like, GPT'd their way through a technical interview or something. We really need to see somebody who is getting things done, and who has the intrinsic motivation to contribute to open source. It's not a luxury most companies have, but it's a luxury we have. And we owe it to our donors to put the limited funds that we have. They're very limited. Like, if you look at FreeCodeCamp's annual tax return, you can look at it. It's like maybe $2-3 million a year in income total. That's nothing. That's nothing. And, so we really don't have the resources to bring on somebody who's not going to get things done. So that is my quick, like, 2 cents on hiring, if anybody wants to know how we hire. And I would encourage anybody who has the privilege of having a big open source project that they can essentially use as like kind of like the farm leagues, or I don't know what they're called in baseball, but like people work their way up through the different leagues. I love the kind of like the baseball system. Like, I don't even really care that much about baseball, frankly, but like, it's really intriguing to me, like how they manage to, like, I love that book Moneyball and stuff like that. Like how they like scout and how they figure out like who gets to climb up to the pros, and how they have, like, I've actually heard that attending like AA games is way more exciting than watching the pro games, because people are working harder to try to get
I think so
into
too.
the pros and stuff. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
But that's kind of like how we treat it, like almost as like a farm system for talent. It's so very different, and thankfully not dramatically impacted by AI that we can tell, because generally AI PRs are not nearly as high quality as PRs by people who know what they're talking about, know what they're doing. And we can definitely sense like, oh, this is like somebody used an LLM to try to generate this PR. And, we're just going to close it and move on.
Yeah. Well, I think we're trying to figure out right now, how close to the line do we get? Like we know AI is here to stay. So do we allow them to use AI on their submission? Do we go to like in-person interviews only? In person, I mean like what we're doing right here. It can be a Zoom call or whatever. So that way, if they're using AI, we get to see how they're using it. Do we say no AI at all? But then that's not going to be a true experience to what they get to do day to day at work. Like, we encourage, if you want to use Copilot, find a way to make it work for you. So I feel like that's what a lot of people are doing. And just kind of like as an insight to you, what we're doing right now, because we're actually redoing our front end interview because of this, is I think the route we're taking is we're going to do an in-person interview. We're going to move away from the take home submissions, which I'm kind of sad about in a way, because I see the appeal to take home interview. Because, I get nervous in interviews. A lot of people get nervous in interviews. You do,
and it's respectful of people's
your
time
best
because they can
work.
do it at their
Yeah.
own pace.
Right.
People are busy.
Yeah,
You've got kids. I've got kids.
Yeah.
Commutes. All kinds of like life getting in the way. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I wouldn't have my current job right now if I couldn't have done the take-home interview, because at the time our first kid had just been born, and you know what comes with newborns. I mean, you can't schedule anything. You kind of have 5-minute pockets of time that you have to take advantage of, and so that's what I had to do. And so it's, in a way, it's kind of an effect that AI has had on our industry, where I feel like we're kind of now forced to move away from take homes because we just can't distinguish, somebody's personal expertise in a subject or an area, which is unfortunate. But that's kind of the route that we're taking. I'm not sure yet if it's the correct route, but I feel like that's kind of where we have to head.
Yeah. So like maybe you could describe let's say you have a magic wand and you can completely change the interviewing process. Like, let's say you did have the resources to potentially pay for somebody. Like, would you pay for somebody to like commute across town or fly in, like for an in-person interview? Like, do you think it's a big issue that people are using AI for these things? Or do you think, like people are going to be using AI in the future is like, we really just care about people getting done? Like, where do you stand on that? Because like people might argue, oh, if they can get things done, they can get things done. Great. But another person might say, well, it may look like they can get things done, but if they're dependent on AI to get things done, then they're going to very quickly encounter edge cases where the AI is not going to be able to help them. And you're just going to have this person who doesn't understand any fundamentals. You're going to have the proverbial person who is too reliant on their tools and can't get things done once you take those tools away from them. The person who is suddenly a fool the moment they lose internet connection.
Right. Yeah. I think if I had like a blank check, I would love to fly people out and then give them a problem to solve with me, and put no restrictions on. Like, obviously, like I Google all the time, right? Google is part of our workflow. Yeah. Or it used to be before AI.
Well, it used to be before the Google results started getting totally janky.
Right?
Because of all the AI slop. They crowds out all the good articles.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. Please carry on.
No, I totally agree with you, right? My blog has been impacted crazy because of these stupid AI-generated
the FreeCodeCamp publication. We're publishing more amazing handbooks, full-length books written by software engineers who have tons of expertise in like Kubernetes or whatever they're writing about. And what do people get when they Google search? They don't get FreeCodeCamp news articles anymore. They get freaking AI slop that is often...
It's so frustrating.
A lot of my own blog post articles are outranked by people who linked to my blog post and who have basically used AI as like text expansion to take my shorter, briefer, more terse and respectful of the reader's time article and just expand it into like this giant, I don't know, like
no structure. Yeah, it's just so. I feel like that could be like a whole podcast episode. So if you want to talk about that, let's talk about it another. Let's do another episode. Let's do another episode.
It's extremely frustrating for people that are writing blog posts.
I know.
Who frankly deserve traffic. These AI, tech bros that are just like, hey, I'm going to focus today. I'm wake up, I'm going to drink a coffee and I'm going to crank out thousands of articles about, I don't know, like 3D modeling or something. I know nothing about 3D modeling. Like, I don't know anything about Maya or any of these tools, but my LLM does. And I've got a bunch of SEO keyword research that I exported from SEMrush. And here you go, LLM. Like, I've got some money to burn on GPUs. Let's do it. Yeah. And it's so frustrating. So frustrating.
I know.
And Google needs to get off their butts and do something about it. It's incredibly unfair to publishers.
It's unfortunate because
these AI overviews suck too, by the way.
Oh, I know. But it's like they're encouraging it now. And it's so unfortunate.
It's not sustainable.
No, it's not.
Killing the golden goose.
I know. We should grab lunch and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And
anyway, what I was going to say.
Town, I actually
that's
will.
right. That's right.
We'll go get some Chipotle.
We could go grab a steak.
Well, maybe a steak. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go.
If FreeCode gets paid, we're not going to get steak. We'll get Chipotle.
No. Oh gosh. Anyway, so I would fly somebody out and I'd want to do it in person, and I'd love to pair with them, put no restrictions on, because I think. Yes, I want to understand their technical ability, but I also want to understand what's their demeanor like when they run into a problem. I want to see somebody who's like interested by a challenge, and that's hard to see through a Zoom chat, right? Like if I find a problem, I'm like, oh snap, I don't know how to do this, but this looks really cool. I'm going to figure out how to do it. That's what I'd want to see. Even if they use AI to help them try and get to that solution, those are kind of the things that I want to see in like junior and mid-level developers, right? Which I think make up a lot of our employee base. So that's what I'd love to do, because I think it's way better to do it in person. But I don't have a blank check to fly everybody out. But what are your thoughts? Would you do that too? Like, I know you're kind of in a different position because of the open source, but
because it works.
Yeah.
But again, I'm in an incredibly privileged position. Like, FreeCodeCamp is the most starred GitHub repository of all time, basically, and we have like this website that people just go to all the time. Like, hundreds of thousands of people visit every day. Like, if you go to a developer conference, everybody, and again, a lot of it comes down to just being in the right place, the right time, being very lucky. Starting this project. So again, I want to be very candid. I like that, most employers, like, let's say you're creating like some software as a service tool that like salespeople use or something like that. Like, you're not going to have the fanatical devotion and interest, and you're not going to be able to say, hey, here's my open source project. Nobody's necessarily going to contribute to some tool that they don't even use, that they don't care about. But because so many people use FreeCodeCamp, care about it and stuff, then we do have tons of open source contributors. We've like had more than 50,000 issue/pull requests from, I don't know, 10,000 open source contributors or more.
Yeah. Isn't that just an amazing community? There's nothing like it. It's so awesome.
Again,
I
feel incredibly blessed, fortunate, like right place, right time. I'm just trying to do the most I can because I feel like I've been given this. So please don't ever look at me and say, oh, this guy is like he's a douchey entitled. No, like, please, I'm trying my best to stay hungry and stay dedicated and like just work to capitalize on this momentum that frankly the community's been given. I love it. What I really want to do, instead of like turning this into like a, like me serenading myself and stuff like that, is just drill into, if infinite resources, I'd absolutely fly people out. Like, let's say I was working at that software as a service tool, but again, I have zero experience like really hiring developers, the traditional way. So I just want to caveat that. What I'm interested in is, a lot of people are freaking out about the job market because there are a lot of layoffs, and people are saying like AI is going to take our jobs and stuff like that, right? Like, and I could understand why they're thinking that, because, Jensen Huang, founder of NVIDIA, is up on the stage in his silly leather jacket, like, hey, everybody. I'm not going to try to do my impression of him, but basically saying like, hey, don't teach your kids to code. Yeah. Don't bother learning all this stuff. Just use an LLM and pay us a whole bunch of money for our GPUs, and everything will just be taken care of. And it's super frustrating. But a lot of people are hearing this, and they're seeing, New York Times articles. They're seeing like, video essays on YouTube, and at the same time, they're getting recommended like, oh, I can't get a job, or like I'm a homeless developer and stuff like that. Like, those kinds of things. I see those all the time on my YouTube recommendations. People are saying the junior developer role is dead, and that it's just senior developers, and it's going to be senior developers working with AI. And the ladder to get to the senior developer position has been kind of pulled out. And it's just like, there aren't going to be as many jobs, and it's going to be fewer developers getting more done using AI tools and paying more money to NVIDIA, essentially.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's, the whole thing about like you just shouldn't learn to code, I think, is ridiculous. We need people to learn how to code. I think now maybe more than ever, because we need people to understand how to use these new tools in today's age. But like, the same thing happened years and years and years ago when the internet kind of came around, right? Like Google, like, oh no, like you can just Google anything and find an answer, and it's the same kind of thing. I feel like, just in a different perspective or a different medium. So I think we just have to figure out where AI belongs in the developer role, and not to discount anybody who's trying to find a job, because it's so hard, right? I mean, it takes a lot of effort. You have to be so diligent. I mean, I landed my first job before AI, and it took me a year, like full-time working, 800 applications, and I only got 10 responses back, right? And only one offer. So I don't think that's a new problem. I think we just have to remember to be diligent and to figure out ways to use the new tools that are available to us.
Is your organization still bringing on like junior devs? And I realize that's a role that like didn't really exist historically. Like there were just developers, and then people added that junior dev because there was like the whole boot camp revolution, and anybody can learn to code. And of course, FreeCodeCamp was not really part of that. We were a reaction to the fact that people were charging tons of money to attend a boot camp. It was like, well, this information, like you could get it from a library for free if you wanted to. So like, let's just make like a slightly more structured version of what you get at the library if you went to the computer science section.
Seriously, the FreeCodeCamp was, I mean, that thing for me, that it allowed me to do that and kind of to help me transition that quickly. And I know I've said it, so I'm kind of giddy about talking today.
I appreciate it.
Like,
I definitely appreciate it. I just want to get the people the stake and not too much sizzle here. So like, do you all still hire junior devs at your company? Like, I don't know, how big is your team? Like, how frequently are you bringing on new people? And are you mostly bringing people on mid-career, or are you still bringing on earlier career people?
Yeah, so great question. So our company right now has kind of transitioned out of that startup phase. We have like 300 plus employees, so not huge, but not small. But our engineering department is probably in the 40s total, maybe.
And what proportion of those people would you say are like have been coding for less than 10 years? Which, I mean, you're 15 years, so like they'd be like a few years behind.
Half of them. Half? Maybe a little more.
Okay, wow, that's great.
Yeah. And I mean, we have a significant pool of senior developers, but I would say most of them have been in the industry for like 10 years, maybe slightly below, right?
Okay.
So they kind of fall within that threshold.
And like how many would you say are below the 2 years of professional experience?
Right now, none.
Okay.
But the way that we hire like new talent, when we're specifically looking to bring on either a junior or a mid-level engineer, well, I shouldn't say that. I should say when we hire a junior engineer, because that was kind of how your question was phrased. We actually do it through internships. So we love to find people who are about to graduate college. We bring them in, have them do a summer internship, and that almost always will transition into a full-time opportunity for them when they graduate.
Let's say you've got a young Braydon Coyer out there who didn't finish college or is not doing college because they are running like mobile apps or something like that. Would there still be an internship path for them? And you don't have to like give me like a political answer. You can just give me like a straight up answer. Like, is that likely?
I don't think so, because I wasn't part of a university.
And I think a lot of the hiring process is still tied up in university career fairs, things like that, even at smaller companies like yours, is my theory. And this is one of the reasons I tell people, just go get a degree. When in doubt, just go get a CS degree. Get it from the cheapest state school you can get it. But that does check that box in the applicant tracking system and stuff like that. So this is signal. This is like helpful information for, and I'm trying to tease that out of you. I do have a couple more questions. I know you've got to stand up in 4 minutes. So I guess one thing that I would say is you have helped put on this big conference. So you're very active in trying to get more people into tech. You were part of Commit Your Code with Danny Thompson, who is like a huge inspiration for me. He runs the Programmer Podcast, which you can also find in the FreeCodeCamp mobile app. We have lots of podcasts in there, including like the Ladybug podcast, Code Newbie, stuff like that. And the Programming Podcast is in there with Danny Thompson and Leon Noel, two legends. And so you helped put that event together. And I wanted to talk just a little bit about getting devs together and like the role of building community and like advice you might have for somebody who wanted to put on a developer conference in their town.
Ooh, yeah, that's a great question. And I know we need to wrap up. I think anybody can do it. I think, Danny hatched this idea late last year, and he was like, hey, I want to put on this conference where we're going to bring people together. We're going to bring subject matter experts, and we're going to put on this 2-day conference where all the proceeds go to charity, like FreeCodeCamp.
Yeah, thank you.
And
half the funds went to us. Half the funds went to St. Jude's, which is a very important children's hospital.
Yes. I think anybody can do it. If we can do it in, I think we had was it 8 or 10 weeks to go from inception to people are showing up and flying in for the conference. I think anybody can do it. You just kind of trying to land your first job. You got to be diligent. You got to have a drive for it. Danny's very passionate
Yeah.
about helping people as well. So, we work well together. There were a lot of things that I didn't expect, like as far as like outside of logistics of putting on a conference, like, you make sure everybody has water and seating. It's like the safety, of a conference and making sure you have security,
Like fire code and stuff.
yeah, like all those things. I just didn't enter my mind, right? And probably somebody who's put on more conferences would have been able to tell me, oh, hey, make sure you pay attention to that. And so that was like a hurdle that we crossed. And so I think anybody who wants to put on a big event like that is going to want to investigate what it means to put on an event in your city.
In terms of logistics, if you could just like an
yeah.
extremely broad checklist, like obviously finding sponsors, finding a venue,
Yeah.
like what were like the big things that people should keep in mind if they want to put on an event and not break the bank? Because I've talked to lots of people who've like lost a lot of money putting together conferences, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, you already hit on two big ones: finding sponsors, find a venue. You have to figure out who's going to speak, and you have to have backups because, when you have a big conference, some people are going to be sick. Their flights are going to be delayed. They might cancel last minute and not even show up. You have to make sure that people understand what's coming up. One of the things we're improving this year in September is trying to have a better agenda available for people because it's a multi-track conference. Food, water, those are all really important you have to think of. And in a lot of ways, like front-end development is like making sure you have a good user experience. The same is true for a conference. Like you want to find ways to make the experience good. And we had a limited amount of time to do it last year. I think it turned out great, but I'm looking forward to
very well
learn.
Organized, excellent food because it was at
Yeah.
the Taco Bell /
Yeah.
Pizza Hut / Kentucky
we were
Fried
at Yum.
Chicken.
We were at Yum
headquarters.
International, like the parent company for Taco Bell and KFC
It's right
and
here in
Pizza
Plano.
Hut.
Yeah.
It was great. Yeah, we had a great time. So I still have a lot to learn, but
Yeah.
I think anybody can do it. I think that's the point. Is if we can do it in 8 weeks, anybody can do it. Because we were trying to get it done super quick.
Yeah. Well, thanks for everything you're doing for the community, through encouraging people, through your amazing blog. Everybody check out Braydon's blog. He built all that stuff himself, and just like it's like a passion project for you to have, or just like a really cool portfolio page. You've got this page that I think is worth noting real quick. I know we got to go, but it's like people that I've met and people I want to meet.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to read through the comprehensive list of like all these developers you look up to. Because, okay, true or false? Never meet your heroes.
False. I think you should meet your heroes. Knowing that nobody's perfect, but I am sitting down right now talking to one of my heroes, right? We're having a great conversation. It's important to find mentors, whether that's in person or from a distance. And I think you should. It helps drive you.
Yeah. Any tips for not fanboying too hard when you meet like, the other famous Coyer, like Chris Coyer or somebody like that?
Yeah. I don't know. You tell me. How am I doing right now?
No, you've been doing great. But I'm just Quincy. I'm not like on his level. But it's been an absolute blast catching up with you, man. I'm looking like seriously. Let's go get some food at some point.
Yeah,
since
it'd be
we're
great.
not that far of a drive apart. And everybody tuning in, I want to thank you for making time. I hope this has been an informative discussion. I hope you've got some good takeaways from it. And I hope you'll just have a fantastic week. Until next week, happy coding.
Thank you so much, Quincy. I appreciate it.